Hello and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Entrican, coming to you on Thursday, September 26th. RIFC rallies in a thrilling stoppage time goal, beating FC Tulsa 2-1 and providing a much-needed spark as this team continues to push for playoffs in their inaugural season. We're going to unpack the goals, we're going to unpack the performance, we're going to talk about some things you probably know and maybe some things you would be interested to hear. And then, of course, later in the episode, we're going to break down what this means for the standings, what does this mean for the playoffs, and get you ready for one of their two final away games against San Antonio FC this Saturday. But before we do any of that, Jason, how is it going, my friend?
Doing pretty good. It's always great coming off of a win, right? A lot less like dour way to start a podcast instead of like, oh, let's talk about this loss.
I mean, especially if it would have been 3 losses, right? Because 3 losses would have been something that just we wouldn't have wanted to have to deal with in the first place. So getting a win, I mean, it's an age-old saying, winning solves all of your problems. It solves your personal problems. It solves your professional problems. It solves your personal, professional, possible personal problems. Like I could just add as many P's in there as I could possibly do, and it would still solve all of them.
So what you're saying is all we have to do is win.
Yeah, I mean,
if only we knew it was that easy.
That's the whole show. We don't even need to do any more recording because the tactics are you win, figure out how you win, and you move on. Easy as that.
There we go. We achieved it.
Speaking of winning, I need to just do the plug here, not for myself or anything, but because of the fact that this is the most incredible thing that I've ever seen. So this is the chip plushie, everyone, that we knew it was coming in the last game, but we couldn't do anything about at the time. So as a result, those are now out. We thought that'd be a sellout for the fans because it was a sold out game, or was it? We'll talk about that in a minute. But because of the rain and the fact that maybe there was some, interesting population counts, we'll get into that. These have not yet sold out, but they will. There's a very limited supply of these. So if you have kids, and for those of you that are just listening, I'm holding up a giant or a small little chip plushie in my hand. Go get this for your kids because you do not want to look like the lamest parent on the planet. They are, I forget the price. I just handed over my credit card and said, bill me, but go out and get these. And if I am now in debt, we're going to have to do a whole new GoFundMe for the show, independent of the server costs and everything else. But anyways, chip plushies, probably the coolest piece of USL merch, I think, in existence.
Yeah, pretty awesome. Is that we're just going to have a GoFundMe page for our chip plushie addiction?
I mean, like, if I looked at the amount of money I've spent on this club this year compared to the amount of money that I've spent for the server costs, it's probably going to be one of those things where, like, I'm all in at this point. I'm ready to reverse mortgage this house and just be all in for Rhode Island FC.
We're locked in.
So let's get into talking about some of the results that happened over the weekend and also what happened just last night with the Open Cup having recently been, happening. It's the end. We got through it. It was 2 MLS teams, but at the end of the day, LAFC versus Sporting Kansas City, a late night game, very late.
Yeah, 10:30 p.m. last night. That was rough. I was already in bed by
I put it on for a second and then realized that because it was an MLS programming with Apple TV, there was an additional 21 minutes of pregame format. The kickoff didn't even happen until 10:51 at night.
Oh yeah, no, that's a good thing I didn't mess with that. Yeah. I don't have time for that.
And then in combination to that, LAFC wins. They're now the Open Cup champions, but it came in the event of extra time. So they won 3-1 off of a Kai Kamara kind of nail in the coffin, but it all came down to extra time. So a long game on a Wednesday night, and it was also against Campeones Cup, against Liga MX. I think there was another match that happened on the night too. There was 3 big games for the night.
Libertadores matches lately. There might have been one last night too.
Too much soccer on a Wednesday night. We're just not ready for that kind of business. So I do want to, though, before we move away from the Open Cup just kind of talk about this. Did you look at the Kai Kamara interview after the game?
Yeah, so I did actually see that someone had posted it, and I saw the tweet, and then I just didn't get a chance to go verify it on Twitter myself.
Yeah, so he was recorded as saying, they asked, is this the end of the Open Cup? And Kai Kamara was like, why would this be the end of the Open Cup? Don Garber handed me the medal for winning it. He handed me the Open Cup. Why would this be the end of it? And if it is, Don Garber needs to not do that. He needs to make sure that teams are in it. He kind of went on this whole tangent about his days. I mean, because Kai Kamara, I think, has played on every MLS team in the history of the league at this point.
Yeah, not too long ago, I think we had kind of looked up his history and we're surprised. Like, wow, he's played for almost every team. He's had like an 18-year career or something, almost exclusively in MLS. I think he's up there with the goal scoring records now too.
Right. And so he commented like Chris Wondolowski, who's a name I haven't heard in a long time, but he basically said like, you can't take away our history. Like when he was coming up, before there was these academies, the path to MLS used to be Division I collegiate play, amateur leagues, Division II, Division III. So it was a process to get to the MLS to earn your way. That may have changed since then, but he kept saying like this is woven into the fabric of U.S. soccer, of competition. You can't take the Open Cup away, and then he even said like you can rename it if you want, if that's what helps sell money. But I think Lamar Hunt would roll in his grave. So like I really appreciate Kai Kamara calling out Don Garber when all the spotlights are on him and saying like don't you dare pull MLS out of this. So it's gonna be really interesting in December to see what happens there. But we are # not an MLS podcast, so we have to move on from that.
Yeah, it is good to see the players kind of say like, "Hey, we like this though." So
agreed. What other? I think some other awards happened this week.
Yeah, speaking of honors, Noah Fuson got onto the old Team of the Week there. So following an FC Tulsa turnover, RIFC midfielder Jose Quezera fed Fuson a quick pass towards the end of the box, taking a touch into a narrow angle. Fuson threaded a shot through the back post into the corner of the net to tie the match at 1-1. He was kind of feeling a little bit lethal from that spot. He took a few other shots from there. Fuson would later service the corner kick in the second half stoppage time that would lead to the match winner from the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Chico himself, Albert Diqua.
No longer Albert Diqua. He's back to Chico. It's been officially ordained by Defiance. He's allowed to be Chico once more.
And yeah, Quezera was also named to the USL Championship Team of the Week as a member of the reserve team for a strong performance in the match. Fuson is the 19th Rhode Island FC honoree named to the USL Championships Team of the Week in 2024.
Fun fact, I actually didn't realize until after the match was over and he got the award that he hasn't had it yet this season. Like you think to Fuson, like Jose Quezera's had it twice, Turnbull's had it twice, even Jackson Lee's had it twice. Like if you go back, like you would think by now Noah Fuson has been on the Team of the Week, but he's only ever made it to the reserve or the bench of that Team of the Week. So the fact that it's this late in the season for a guy who's tied for first place for our goal contributions, it kind of makes you scratch your head and go, how has that happened? Like, what is it about his game that hasn't gotten more attention? Or has he just been really unlucky in the games that he's thrived and shined that someone like, Nick Markanich has shined a little brighter on the night?
Yeah, I think he suffered from one of those things where these Team of the Week honors kind of tend towards favoring people like based upon stats, right? So he's had consistently high level performances from us or with us, but they're not always putting up tons of numbers. I think his numbers have been kind of spread out throughout the season.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So let's get into the numbers. Let's get into the game itself because, FC Tulsa was a very interesting game. I think at the end of the day, if you look at it from the perspective of we all thought this was on paper, we should get this win. I think it got a little bit hairier than anyone wants to admit. And it's important that we spend enough time tonight really kind of breaking that down and talking about it. So, first and foremost, let's get through the formation. Lots of chop and change. Again, some of it expected because of the returning players that were made available, but some new surprises along the way and some out of position. I don't know. Let's break this down.
Yeah, so in our formation here, we saw Koke return back to net. We've got Grant Stoneman, Karifa Yao, and Frank Nodarse in that back line. And then in your midfield there, you had Clay Holstead filling in at the right wingback position with Harivo and Ibarra in the center there. And then Jose Quezera out on the left. And then it's kind of that 4-3-3 again to a certain extent with Paniotu, JJ Williams, and Noah Fuson up top.
So if you're following along on the graphic, I totally realized that I layered Koke Vegas behind the pitch. So he's there. You just can't see him. He's a stealthy ninja of a keeper. But I want to draw your attention to the bench where you see not one, but two faces on the bench that we have not seen, one in a very long time, and two ever in Kofi Chumesi and, like you said, Amish Shapiro-Thompson. I was ecstatic to see them finally get an opportunity to come back to this team. the Defiant 1636 has opened up their supporters group, player of the year awards. And I joked on the Discord that when you look at it by the numbers, technically Kofi Chimesi is probably one of the best players we've had, because remember, he was the catalyst that started a lot of that run of form in that early May and June, where he was playing in that surrogate right center back column. And without Kofi, who knows where this would have gone. He had some incredible numbers, some incredible stats. I also joke that, Isaac Anking would have been another great contender for that opportunity. And so it gets me kind of thinking, and I don't want to call your vote here in public, because, voting is important. Go vote this November, everyone. But on top of that, go vote for the supporters group decision as well for player of the year. But I do want to ask you, have you put thought into the vote yet for who might player of the year be?
Yeah, I have a few names that I'm kind of going through, who I'm not sure like where I'm gonna land on. Clay Holstead being one of them.
Wow, just saying your name. See, I left you in anonymity, but you're going right into
Stephen Turnbull.
You're influencing the decisions of others now, Jason, and I'm there for it.
Frank Nodarce. I mean, can I just vote for the whole team?
So okay, so here's the whole reason I bring this up as an exercise. Is in normal soccer reporting across North America, there's typically 3 votes that do happen. There's usually your player of the year. There's usually the defender of the year, because that's very rarely the same player. Defenders often get overlooked in that kind of impact or circumstance. And then there's your newcomer / rookie. It can either be a player you've brought up from the academy or a new signing. Obviously, in year one, every single player is a new signing, regardless of their pedigree or their veteranship across the league. But if you were to split it, do you believe that there should be a player of the year as well as a defender of the year? Because, I mean, Frank's technically in 3rd place on goal contributions, and he's been lights out. I'm not saying I'm voting for Frank. I'm just making a strong case that, like, it would be a crime that Frank isn't in the consideration for player of the year. And sometimes defenders often get, they get overlooked.
It's a good shout to show appreciation to your defenders, but then, like, at the same time, what if a team is having a down year and they're like -25 goal difference, and you know what I mean? Like, it gets that weird kind of thing where you're giving out an award and they probably don't want it, don't feel like it's deserved. They're like, maybe statistically my numbers are good, but like, we didn't do good this season. I don't feel good about taking this honor.
It's like giving Frank Nodarce his first Defiant 1636 or paddle for man of the match against the Phoenix loss, and him just wanting to like break it over his leg right in front of the fans because he didn't want to accept that award at the moment in time. I get it. Hey, I get it. But I'm just saying. And by the way, the correct answer, if you're -27 goals differential and you're in last place in the league, the winning defender of the year for you is you write in Nate Silvera, just because he didn't contribute to the problem. That's always the answer.
Whoever has the least amount of minutes.
Exactly. Like, can't be their fault. They weren't the ones on the pitch doing the work.
There we go.
All right. Well, let's get into the game itself. Some interesting facts. I love one of the fun facts you pulled for this, and I love that you're letting me read it, because it is the most baseball stat of all baseball stats ever. And it tickles me that it's up on the screen. So, and for those of you that like baseball facts, this is a soccer pod, I thought. There's a beauty in the game of baseball. When you have 200 and 1,000 games a year per team, they start to they're able to use stats in a way that tells any kind of story they want. And like one of my favorite stats of all time was the great, I mean, like truly the great Harry Carey had talked about an opportunity where when games were played on a summer solstice, the Chicago Cubs were like, I don't know, like they had a +5 ERA, and it was just like, what are you talking about? And so like I love when announcers, I love when play-by-play callers, they pull these like random things out. And the fact that you've now collected the stat, because I looked at all of our different engines that we do to collect data, and this is certainly not one of them. So you pulled this from somewhere deep and true. But for the audience listening along, I want everyone to know,
from my heart,
I want everyone to know that as of last week's game, Rhode Island FC officially at home on rainy games, undefeated. You heard it here first.
You'll never sing that.
Charleston Battery, it was a draw. Now we've got the win against FC Tulsa. The rain is our ally, and that's a perfect ally to have here in New England for home games. More surprisingly, though, on that fact, all jokes aside, I honestly thought that we had more rain games. The weather has been incredible.
We've been lucky.
I hate to talk about weather at all, but like I remember last year, and it's a stat that has haunted me, 13 out of 16 weekends last summer had at least one rainy day. It was the worst weather possible. So like coming back now, I'm starting to question, did I do enough with my weekends, or did Rhode Island FC just like get super lucky? Because remember like the home game, the very first game, it was in March. The year before, it had been a torrential downpour on that day. Everyone's thinking, why are you having a game in the winter in Rhode Island for your home opener? And it was still beautiful, perfect weather. So no, Ace is writing in, wasn't the Phoenix game rainy? It was rainy because all of the fans cried out in unison, and all the tears was what made the game moist because of the fact that we lost so badly at that first home loss. But having said that, I love that stat. So thanks for bringing that up. Speaking of Phoenix, though, another interesting stat: second time ever at home where we've gone down by a goal in less than 10 minutes. In fact, the goals are very similar. Phoenix scored around the 7th minute. FC Tulsa then also puts one in before the end of the 8th minute there. Let's talk about that goal, because we weren't ready for that. And there's some interesting correlation there, Jason, because you and I were scrambling to do something in the press box, whereas, everyone else was probably like fixated on what happened. The scoreboard glitched, and you were trying to help me work through someone else's problem, and we were all down with like flashlights, looking at plugs, looking at buttons, and then we just look up, and 1 minute the ball is in the final third of FC Tulsa, and the next it's in the back of the net over Koke's head. Were you just like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Like, I did not understand. I couldn't even see the replay because the board was glitched at the time when we were trying to still figure everything out. Walk me through, like, just your feelings. Give me your first impression of that goal.
I thought like, oh, okay, we're doing this again. We're gonna start this. We're gonna start this match off bad. But at that point, I was like, okay, let's just see what. In some ways, I was thinking, hopefully at home, this is kind of a wake up call for them to respond. I think it's a little bit tougher away without the fans to be behind you. But, we had talked about in length about the last 2 away games and how they weren't particularly great. And to start the match off that way was, I was feeling like, okay, is this just going to be at best a draw?
I agree. And what's more interesting is I immediately went back to like, when was the last time we got scored on this early? And then you went and did the research really quick, like, oh, it was Phoenix. And it's like, oh no, like I said, everyone remembers that game. Unlike Phoenix, though, this is now, instead of ending on a bad note, this was the second game ever where we came from behind. Another stat that I thought we had more of at this point. I remember the first one being really important against North Carolina, but that was also the only one since. In fact, that there's been 4 other opportunities where we had a chance to come back from behind, but at best we drew or we lost. And so it seems like it's one of those things that we can only really kind of do in spurts. And it's been almost over 8 games where we've had different opportunities, but just those 4 where we've been able to come from behind. And that hasn't happened since July 28th. So like for me, it was like, like what is going on with this team? How do we start this way? Our 3rd game in a row where we go down first. I wouldn't say I gave up on it, but I will say that by the end of the game, I felt that we worked way too hard for this. When you look at the stats, when you look at everything on paper, and I know we're going to sound like a broken record at this point, but this team, like Rhode Island FC, dominated FC Tulsa in every manner, in every stat that mattered. And it's difficult to understand when you walk away from a game where your XG is 1.45, Tulsa's was 0.18, and crazy for Tulsa, they had 4 shots all game. First 3 before the first 16 minutes of the game. The last one came in like the 85th minute. So there was like a 60-minute period where FC Tulsa was just flat. They were asleep at the wheel, whatever you want to call it. We outperformed them in every single way. And yet it came down to like squeaky bum time to be able to get that. We dominated possession. We dominated crosses, corners, chances created. We dominated the crossbar getting hit. Okay. Like who's going to say that, right? Like we just destroyed FC Tulsa, and yet it came down to the nail biter it was.
Yeah. Stats don't mean everything. In some ways, this match almost didn't go our way. If it were not for some tactical changes that happened at halftime, we'll get into that a little bit later. And then that late goal, which to a certain extent, we've become known for scoring late goals, but you can't always count on that always going to happen. Sometimes the ball just is not going to fall your way. We are almost talking about a draw or maybe even a third loss if the team really didn't rally there in that second half. At times it can be a game of inches.
I agree, and we'll talk about the tactics. We'll especially talk about one particular piece that really kind of sealed the deal for the club on the night in Jack Paniotu. Obviously, getting back into this though, seeing the chop and change, it was great seeing Jojea Quazera come back into the squad. Koke coming back in makes sense. I wanted to ask though, is part of the reason that we ended up on the back foot right from the beginning some of this roster strategy that we put in place? Like I said, those two players make sense, and Jojea had one heck of a game. But then, like, I see JJ getting the start with Chico in a sub role. Clay at right wing back was the most confusing deployment that I saw on the night. I would have never thought that that's how that would have happened. Is this something that we need to be worried about, that we're seeing all this variation going into the final few games? Or is this just more coach experimenting or playing with rest and managing the minutes of these players? It's really interesting. We went so long with such a tried and true strategy that he has to go and try to reinvent the strategy, and then he goes back to the strategy that worked and it won the game for him, right? That is a hard argument to sell on anybody at this point. Like, okay, where's this experimentation coming from? What's the impetus behind it? What's the purpose? And if you are doing it, should you be doing it at the beginning of the game, or should you be doing it when the game's well in hand? Like, what are you trying to prove with it? I was very confused by some of the players that coach elected to put on the pitch on the night.
But yeah, so speaking of all this change, we after the game got the opportunity to speak to Dave McKay. He decided Kano sent him instead of himself. He wanted to, have something different there. So we talked to him and actually asked him about it. I wouldn't say we got necessarily a definitive answer. Maybe that's something only Kano would know. But he did mention rest among a bunch of other things. And I think that kind of is the main case as we're getting towards the end of the season. You've seen a bunch of, big name players getting injured in Europe. So you have to be careful with these guys. They are humans. It doesn't matter how good you are. There's at some point, if you don't get any rest, you're going to break yourself,
I love that you're comparing us to the big teams in Europe. It just tells us that we're ready for anything at this point.
Yeah, biggest league in the world.
I mean, we didn't win the U.S. Open Cup, but that's because we're saving ourselves for the FIFA World Cup competition at the end of the season.
We didn't feel it was worth our time if MLS didn't send all of the teams.
Right. If Revolution isn't in it, we're not interested.
Yeah,
I agree.
We don't want to bother with that.
I agree. So let's talk about this though. Like, I do want to talk about what went wrong, what went right. Like you said, Dave McKay comes in, he talks about some of the tactical choices, but there was definitely a sense of urgency that needed to be applied in the second half. When you look at it, like we said, this game came down to a matter of inches. It was down to the wire, whatever you want to call it. We get the goals scored off of Noah Fuson and Chico to get the job done. Fuson's goal, which if you haven't gone back into the post-game interview, go back and watch it. I asked him, he was ranging all night for that goal. Like, you had seen it. I think he attempted it 4 different times on the night. One of them was the crossbar challenge. Does
he win that? Is Centerville Bank giving him some money there?
I think Centerville Bank owes Noah Fuson for $500.
They actually, considering we hit the crossbar numerous times at the end of the season, they should, do some crossbar hit of the season and then just donate $500 to charity.
Oh man,
it's free idea. There you go.
There you go, Rhode Island FC. Also, though, someone did hit the crossbar on the halftime, so congratulations to that guy.
The fans have actually, I think it's the second practicing one. Or something.
Yeah, they know what's up now.
A little better.
But so back to it. So Fuson was ranging for that, and he said in the post game interview, I practiced that shot every single practice. That is my go-to placement. It kind of looks now to me like Chico is the poacher. Air Frank is in the air. Clay Holstead only shoots bangers from the top right corner. And apparently now Fuson is just dangerous in the top left corner, like on that side area, because he kept trying to size it until finally on the third rip, it goes right into the net. And you could see right away, as soon as he shot it, he knew that was going in. So Fuson's goal gets it across the finish line. He gets to his 11th goal contribution. And then Chico gets subbed on, says, hey, hold on a second. You're not jumping me on the line on a home match. Comes in, cross in from Fuson. It gets battered around in the box. Chico's in the right place, the right time, and just buries that up into the top corner near post. I have to ask, and that was his 8th goal of the season, having last scored in Oakland, against Oakland, in August. But that goal gives Rhode Island not only their 13th goal in the last 15 minutes of competition. We continue to talk that this club is a late bloomer when it comes to its goal production, and they are now, by the way, only second against or chasing Charleston Battery. I think they're tied with Louisville City in terms of who scored more goals later in the season. But that's also because Chico was a substitute. That's their 12th goal as a substitute. We haven't talked about that in a while, which they're still in second for that as well, chasing Sacramento Public at 13. How important was this goal for Chico? How important was this goal for Fuson, especially coming off of a multi-game drought where we weren't scoring anything?
Oh, it was huge, especially after the last 2 matches. We didn't score away. We didn't look very good. And to get your strikers going as we're kind of heading into that chase for playoffs where it is very tight and we need them to score, you want to keep up that mentality with them that they feel lethal in front of net. You don't want them second guessing themselves. We need them to, as Colin would say, shoot it.
I love that. I agree 100%. I guess then, when you think about it, JJ Williams also had a couple of really good looks. He'll probably want one of those shots back because he could have easily gotten us another goal on the night. But you do want to see your strikers shooting. And I think after the last few games, Orange County was different. They were knocking on the door multiple times. Pittsburgh, no one really got into the game. But here we are now. We've got the boots are getting hot again. And I want to ask, is this a tale of two halves? Because we talked about the 15 minutes to go kind of goal scoring that we've become known for amongst our draws and our physicality. Now there's this new dimension or layer to our game. Is this something that we haven't seen before, or is this just what we've been doing all season and it's never going to change?
Tale as old as time. Yeah, the first half didn't particularly start well for us, like we alluded. Get scored in under that 10 minutes. It hasn't happened since Phoenix. And despite the possession and 6 shots, 2 on target, I don't think RIFC looked that convincing in that first half. Right? They had a little bit more possession. It didn't feel like they were doing anything valuable with it. It felt like there was a lot of stumbling up front. And like I'd mentioned earlier, I was kind of thinking that we might be in for a long night. There's one thing that I will never doubt RFC on, and that is their lack of spirit. I knew that the lads were always going to continue and fight till the end, but there are some games where even when they are, it's just not really going their way.
And I'll argue that, I don't think we've seen this team have a breakdown. I think we've come off the rails a couple of times where we're chasing and we try to commit to something that ends up countering or working against us. But we're certainly not like another team playing in New England above us right now that is completely there's infighting. That locker room has to be just in shambles right now. This team is a team that perseveres, and even when the results don't go their way, they fight through it all. You can definitely tell that Kano will never call it culture, but that's culture, right? That is a fighting spirit that you can't teach. You can try to instill, but it has to come from somewhere where all the players agree to do it. I want to get back though to how we got to this position, because I agree with you. Looking at this, I think one of the big changes or the big notices is we go back to that goal. I don't think that FC Tulsa earned that goal. I think that was one of those freak kind of situations that caught everyone unaware, including FC Tulsa. I mean, congratulations, full credit to Aaron Bibu on the goal itself. It was beautiful in its own way. That's the kind of goal that if you can do that on a regular basis, you're going straight up to MLS and you're bypassing a league like USL. But I don't think that that's the kind of effort that we would see showing up from a team like FC Tulsa on the regular. So, I mean, it was early in the game. I think it caught us all kind of unawares to that regard. But the concern is this team hadn't come from behind in over 5 attempts. And with the scoring that early, my concern was teams have learned that once they go up, they can bunker. And to your point, this team was ready to challenge anything that happened their way. They were ready to tear apart a defense. And while Tulsa was a hard nut to crack, you did see that their entire offense just completely fell flat. John Morrissey broke it down in a sense that he thought that the change on this was that with the three forwards that we've always been that 3-5-2 that has people shifting, but we really saw the front three start to move forward with the combination of Fuson, JJ Williams, and Panayotu. Panayotu did put in a pretty good defensive performance on the night. That continued to destabilize FC Tulsa after they went up. They weren't really able to play the game, the configuration that they wanted to play on the night. So it allowed a lot of turnovers in the midfield and allowed us to keep a lot of pressure, even in the first half where we weren't really getting what we wanted out of it. In the second half, especially as we started to switch those players, we completely flipped the game on its head. And I think what this shows this team now, because I don't know if they knew it before, they made themselves been like, we can't let this be a three-peat of going down early or going down first and then not being able to claw something back. I think some sort of flip got switched on the night that allowed them to say, hey, like, we can battle through this. And that's the perfect mentality that you need going into a playoff run. You need to be able to tell yourself, we can battle through any adversity. We can win the games that need to be won. And that's just exactly what happened.
Yeah. So like you said, after that dressing room talk and then a tactical shift, they came out the second half and they looked the dominant team. Second half saw 18 shots, 16 of those being in the box and 6 of those on target, on top of 63.4 possession and a significantly better field tilt, which saw Tulsa only able to get the ball into Rhode Island's final third 20% of the time, with the 80% being that midfield and then Tulsa's final third there.
Yeah, and this team is able to do that any day of the week. But what really happened was what Dave McKay said about the tactic that they deployed around the 60th minute, where they made some tactical decisions. Were you surprised at what McKay said? Because it kind of lined up with what we've been talking about internally for a few weeks. To hear Dave McKay echo the same sentiments that we've been thinking about, it felt really good for me knowing that I actually may know what I'm talking about here. But I'm curious, what were your takeaways, both from what McKay said and then what we actually saw in that transformation?
Yeah, so it was interesting when we got the chance to talk to him after the game in the scrum. We kind of asked him, hey, we saw a significantly better team in the second half. Like, what happened? One of the things that they did was make a tactical change. So in the first half, they were playing more of that 3-4-3, where of those front three, the 2 wide forwards are kind of also like 10s, and then you just have one striker pushing up top. They switched that back to our usual 3-5-2, which sees one of those forwards kind of drop back a little bit more to be a 10 to bridge that midfield to 2 strikers. On top of that, he said that they kind of called out the guys and said, hey, you guys are not being yourself. That was not a Rhode Island FC performance in that first half, and that they kind of need to shape up. And we saw a better attitude change from them as well, I think, on the pitch there.
Do you think Coach Kano gives like an inspiring, like Friday Night Lights, like halftime, like pep talk? Or do you think he's just in there swearing left and right, throwing chairs, like flipping over anything that can be flipped?
I don't think it's the, the classic hairdresser treatment, as they would say, but I think it's a little, it's heated, but there's a little balance to it. I think he, was probably frustrated with the team after that first half performance.
I mean, I would be too, especially even with the goal going down. You see that you're the better team. You just can't convert and capitalize. And coming off of 2 consecutive losses, I would be mad at home in front of fans to have the vestiges of like, okay, we're doing this again. Like, turn this around. You have 45 minutes left to figure this out. Let's get out there and change our fortune. So I agree. And like you said, tactics notwithstanding, there's, I think, a couple of things that really unlocked Rhode Island FC's opportunities in the second half. And the game to me boiled down to kind of some big elements. One, I don't think Jojea Quazera is getting enough credit on this team as of late on what he's doing on the left side of the pitch when he's going and playing his game. He is a player that we have always seen be very comfortable and brave to take on defenders 1v1. Most of the time, he actually, he's very good at keeping the ball. Like, I will give him full credit. He can dribble out of most problems and he can get around a defender, where Jojea's game has, not always been there. It would be, just kind of picking up his head and looking for where he can send the cross in. Sometimes he's so focused on, I got it past their feet, like I just need to fire it in. And sometimes it's just not there. But like Jojea is single-handedly driving a lot of the attack. And something we haven't seen a lot of lately is that link up with Noah Fuson. And it's interesting in the games where Turnbull's been playing, he's been playing defensively more. I mean, he still gets up. He's a wing back, but like he's been playing more of like the defensive reserve, if you will. And Quazera's had a lot more freedom, something we've started to see. We didn't realize we were seeing it after Prince Sadie kind of lost his starting role and on that left side wing. But Jojea Quazera has been phenomenal. And I think that even though he got team of the week honors on the reserve side, I don't think enough praise is going to what he did on the night. And then I think the other big piece is even with the tactical change approach of what they wanted to do, it really came down to the subs. You know, bringing JJ Williams off. I don't think he had a bad game. I think that where his positioning is, and we're going to talk about that with Jack Panayiotou, but I think both of their positioning wasn't doing Rhode Island FC any favors on the game. And, you know, once you saw Chico come on and once you saw Steven Turnbull come on, this game opened up. One of the things FC Tulsa did really well that I haven't seen a lot of other teams do this year against us is they played a very condensed game. They kept their numbers on one side of the pitch, kind of trying to overload some sides and play a very compact game. That's not something we've seen a lot from our opponents this season. They usually match formation, whether that's man marking or just the numbers that they have based on the numbers we have. But a lot of teams, like if you have players wide, like you're not going to obviously go mark that player that's sitting on the out of touch line, but you're going to be closer to them. FC Tulsa played so tight when they moved up or down the pitch that it forced us to kind of compact and like contain that so that we could get the ball back. And then we really didn't have an opportunity to break out and do what we wanted to do. But once you saw Steven Turnbull come on, and you saw Chico come on, Chico started to stretch the pitch horizontally as he got way further than JJ Williams ever did. And then once Steven Turnbull came on, Clay Holstead played tight. He played defender first ball for a majority of the night. Again, I don't know if that was to unlock Quazera and let him work his magic, but that was not the normal creative, adventurous Clay Holstead that we normally see. It almost felt like, hey, your first order of the night is to make sure that a ball never gets past you, a player never gets past you.
We've seen times before when he's playing in that spot where I think he, like, his right wing back mind turns off and he goes into like center mid mode and then just all of a sudden finds himself in the box. So I think he maybe was trying to be mindful of his positioning there.
Carlos writes in, whatever coach did during halftime, it worked properly for the win. But yeah, so the stretch, like the stretch is really what started unlocking. And we got back to what has worked so well for the system. And so much so that like afterwards we started saying, okay, well, the question here is if this is down in positioning and we look at the substitutions that were made before the goals were scored and after, there was one glaring kind of like key moment here where we're like, okay, is this a problem? So before I throw the slide up there, I'm going to ask you, is Jack Panayiotou a problem for this team?
You know, I wouldn't use the word problem, but I think it is an interesting thought exercise because we didn't score the goals until after he was taken off of the game. And then we look back at the last two losses. Those weren't great. Granted, he was there for the Birmingham home win, but we've just kind of seen some mixed results, I would say. I mean, even, you know, USL tactics mastermind John Morrissey thinks that with him on the pitch, there seems to be a bit of imbalance in the team. So, you know, when Dave McKay told us about that switch, I kind of got us thinking in terms of to how we had said it felt like our front three were pushed too narrow and too on top of each other. And when we play that traditional, I don't know, traditional, but like we play our 3-5-2 style.
I love that that's the tradition.
New England tradition. You know, we saw 2 goals and a better performance from the team. So I just think it's something that we maybe have to keep in mind. I think that to a certain extent, we created a style for our team when he was not a part of it, after maybe he kind of helped energize us to a certain extent. And now we don't know per se how to fit him into that team and also keep all the tactics and all the pieces in the same places. Like, it's not just an easy swap, right? You don't say, oh, okay, well, I just take out player X and put him in and boom, everything's fine.
Right.
There's a little more nuance to it. And I think coach is going to kind of have to work on a individual, like position by position maybe like some tweaks to see how he can get him in this team, because no one is denying here that he is not a fantastic player
Agreed.
and can create chances out of nothing. He can pick the ball up and just dribble past people and thread passes that, no one else on this team can. But we've struggled with him on the pitch recently. So
Right. And so if you're looking along, if you're watching along and you see, I would challenge you to find where Jack Panayiotou is on this positioning. This is the average positioning from the gear that they wear that's tracked. This is not their formation. This is literally the average position that Jack Panayiotou occupied in his 60 plus minutes on the pitch. I can't see him, Jason. Do you see him?
I can't, but spoiler alert, he is right under JJ Williams. So this is one of those interesting things where I don't know if it's because neither of those players really played together very much. JJ was coming back from injury, but they seem to be occupying the same space. And I even a few times during the match recall seeing them like way too close, where you think one of you needs to kind of move somewhere else to stretch and make yourself available for that pass. But it's like they're both going for the same balls. Remember earlier in the season we talked to Kaler and we're asking about Joe Brito, and it was a similar thing where, well, technically him being a midfielder, he's kind of that more reserved forward. So a lot of times he is occupying some of those same spaces. So we've seen much better like attacking threats from him when later on in the game he is swapping forward, because he's essentially playing like one of those forwards where he's going to pick that ball up in that kind of like area right there and then just go forward with it.
Right. And I think if you're following along, so the ones that are highlighted or circled are the substitutions. And like you said, Jason, JJ Williams is right on top of Jack Panayiotou here. What I will start with is this is not isolated to just JJ and Jack. This happened with Chico. This actually was happening a lot in the earlier games when he was here for the first stint as well. What's different with JJ's game is, like you said, he often at times plays this, hold up target forward. And for that to happen and no one else coming in front of him, he's often got to drop deeper so he can collect balls and give second balls or second bounces, if you will, to the players that are coming up from, our side of the pitch. With that being the case, Jack was probably trying to position himself to collect and receive those second balls from JJ for distribution purposes. But I don't think that that's where we shine. And when you see where Chico was positioned for his 20 plus minutes that he got on the night, you can see how much deeper he was getting to be comfortable to stretch that back line. I think that Jack Panayiotou thrives when he has space to create. And I think that when he is stifled by other players being around him, he either is only going to make the safe pass or he's going to make the pass that like needs to continue the ball, but he won't make the dangerous pass. Some of the best things we saw in that first game in Sacramento was he took chances to cut lines or to find outliers that like we weren't looking for on the pitch. I often equate it, if you've ever played a game of FIFA and you hit triangle and you're like, oh, that's not where I wanted the player to go. Like that's not the pass that I wanted to have happen.
Through ball special.
Right. Well, this is like the opposite of that, where Jack Panayiotou saw something you didn't see, and that's exactly where he wanted it to go. So I think that it really comes down to what coach wants to play Jack Panayiotou as. But when you see the substitutes come on, this is the real reason. So part of what John Morrissey said about the three front press, it was controlling Tulsa's momentum. But the other part of it is what you see now. It is we brought in our original players that are comfortable in these roles, and they stretched the field. They gave us space to kind of really disorganize FC Tulsa, and it allowed us to be dangerous. For Jack to thrive in this system, we either need to acknowledge what the Revs do with him and bring him in as a winger and put him out wide, or we need to give space so that he can create for us as a true through and through 10. I don't know if what Dave McKay said was necessarily completely true about needing 2 9s instead of a 10. Noah Fuson is a chameleon. He can wear the 9 hat and he can wear the 10 hat. It's just the instructions he needs in the moment. I think it comes down to more of like, we need to create space around Jack Panayiotou to see what he can do for us and if he can thrive in that role. Because if he can't thrive in that role, then we need to let him get stronger and better in another opportunity. Because it seems like right now Noah Fuson and Jack could kind of be, they're different players, of course, but like they could kind of be interchanged. And if we're saying that we need 2 9s and a 10, then let's do that. But let's make sure that Jack Panayiotou has some space to breathe. I think, like you, he's too skilled. He's too talented to not find a way onto the starting 11. But if they can't figure that out, then I think they need to kind of like slow down the reintroduction of him and figure out what makes sense. Because so far, I don't think it's been working since he returned to the team. And it's weird to say because like his stats that he's contributed to all say that he's a great player and he has a lot to offer. We're just not unlocking it. We're not tapping into the Jack Panayiotou potential.
Yeah, like you said, if we can't find a way to make it work at the end of the day, the team comes first, right? We've got to win matches to get to the playoffs.
Yeah, what are the Revolution going to do? Recall him? We've been there, done that. Brian Spalding has been recalled from the Rowdies, and he's now playing for the Revolution too. Do it, Cardinalfo. Do it, okay? I dare you. I dare you.
He's probably listening right now. He's like, all right, fine. He presses the recall button.
I would say something that Coach Porter said about the refs, but I will not. I will not say that.
Yeah, we don't do that here.
All right. So all jokes aside, this game was an incredible success. I don't like how close it got to the end, but I think the boys can feel very proud of themselves. I think it was exactly what they needed to kind of just redirect their attention and get themselves set up for this end of season playoff run. And I'm just really happy that it happened at home and they kind of got that bad voodoo off of them.
Yeah. So getting to the standings here so we can kind of move on to that preview for the next game here. So as we look at the standings here, RIFC are currently sitting in 7th place in the Eastern Conference on a 9-13-7 record. Their second win in the last 5 matches coming off of 2 consecutive road losses. RIFC finds themselves back on the road to San Antonio FC. When we take a look at the playoff watch here, there's currently 6 points separating 5th and 11th. USL Tactics projects us to still take 5th with 49.1 points. Interesting to see where we're going to get that 0.1, but we'll get there. And the magic number sits at 15 with all remaining games needed to be won. It appears it may go down to the wire to determine who will make it in. RFC finds themselves in a must-win situation.
How dare you?
Where dropping points can make or break their playoff ambition. RFC has not won any of their last 5 road matches. Ouch. Drawing twice and losing thrice. Additionally, they also have scored in the last 4. Will RFC be the team in the ambulance after another tough away road game?
Is that the call the ambulance but not for me meme?
Oh no, I said the word thrice and then
yeah,
thrice
went right over my head there. It's been a while since I've listened to them. Okay, so you said the MW word, and we already have a question in that I got an email about. So I'm just going to pivot here for the time being. We're not going to talk about it, but we will talk about what this really is. And based on the magic number and based off the standings, this is now a series of can't loses, right? Which are completely different than must wins. And I'm not going to beat that horse anymore, but I want to talk about what's really interesting here on the projection. So if you're watching along on the screen, we have the current 3 other teams that are occupying spaces inside the playoff positions 5 through 8, including us at 7th. And then we also have Hartford Athletic, who are knocking on the door at 9th place. But what's really important here to talk about is not only the projected finishes and the magic numbers, because if you look at that, for what we see here, 3 teams are guaranteed to be locked in with magic numbers if they win all of their matches outright. But when you look at the playoff circumstances and the head-to-head matches ahead, it's impossible for this to happen. Points have to be dropped between these 4 teams, which means it is anyone's race to be had. I'm not really considering Detroit City right now, even though they're only 5 points ahead. I just think that they're a little too far considering what they have left from an opponent standpoint. The same thing with the Tampa Bay Rowdies. So if you look at it, the Birmingham Legion, they have 5 games left. 3 of them are against teams that are in contention for playoff berth positioning, including North Carolina FC, who are tied with Hartford Athletic in that 9th place positioning. So they have to play through all 3 of those teams to get wins to maintain some sort of positioning. Those are 6-game point leaps, whether it's up or down. That could be detrimental to their positioning. Their magic number is still 14, though. They have the lowest one, but they have some of the most difficult competition ahead. I don't know that they get this done. Indy 11, likewise, projected to finish in 7th place with a magic number of 15. They have 6 games, so they have a game in hand, but they have 3 games that they have to go through that have potential points being dropped or lost.
That looks rough, actually. Louisville, Loudoun, Detroit, Legion, and then Rowdies.
All teams that they have left are in the playoff hunt with the exception of Miami.
That has to be the hardest.
Well, I don't know, because then you look at Loudoun, right? They're technically in 8th place. They also have a game in hand. Look what they have to go through. They have to go through a Colorado Springs Switchbacks.
Who are actually phenomenal right now.
Phenomenal team. Then they have 4 games in a row that all have playoff implications in Hartford Athletic, who are on an unbeaten streak right now, the best in their club's history.
We beat them so hard that they like reset.
Well, they got rid of their CEO after that, and they were like, let's actually be a decent team. Then they have to go through Indy. Then they have to go through us away. Then they have to go through Pittsburgh, who's probably not going to make the playoffs, but they're making it very difficult for any team. And then they have to finish the season Charleston away. So they're projected to actually have the worst of these. And then you have this weird situation with Hartford Athletic. They actually have the easiest of them all. They only have to go through Tampa Bay in an away game where if they drop the points, then they can jump Loudoun with a good match. Then they have North Carolina. That one probably should have been highlighted as a points contention, but then they have to get through FC Tulsa and Orange County, a team that we did get through and a team we did not get through. All in all, this is going to come down to it at the end of it's not going to matter what games are won. It's going to start to be watching the games that are lost. And that is why this is going to be the back half of this playoff standing is going to be more interesting than the front 4 positionings. I really think that this is going to come down to things like tiebreakers, to head-to-head matches, you name it, all of the different conventions that determine which kind of result can happen. It's going to be close. So it's important that we win all of our games when we can, but it's not going to matter in the sense that it's going to come down to when teams are going to drop points. And with all of those head-to-head competitions, it's going to be spicy.
Yeah, some exciting weeks as we're, heading into these playoffs.
Exactly. Which, interestingly enough, though, now to talk about our actual lineup, our match this weekend, we're going to be facing a team that probably isn't going to be making the playoffs. So you look at San Antonio FC right now; they're on an 8-7-13 record this year, sitting in 10th place. Their form has been better a little bit as of late, winning 3 of their last 6 games, each with only a 1-0 win. But they have 4 of their remaining 6 games at home. The problem is they're coming off of a beating from Phoenix Rising last week, losing 4-0. I want to start this before we even get into it. Jason, when you get beat that badly, you just made a joke a second ago about Hartford had like the factory reset. What does a loss like 4-0 do, especially when you're coming back home in front of fans? You're probably not going to be making the playoffs. They're not completely out of it. For them, this is a must-win against Rhode Island FC. How dangerous does this make San Antonio FC right now?
Yeah, I think it's not a good position to be in per se. You'd rather see them like maybe squeak out a uncomfortable win or something. A lot of times after teams get beat like this, there's always a reset back to like, all right, back to basics, guys. Let's make sure that we are resolute in defense there in the back. And, at that point could make it a difficult night for us, especially because they are a fairly decent defensive team. So they could prove hard for RIFC to break down.
I think teams coming off of, schlackings like that are always the most scariest ones to play against the next time, whether it's because they have something to prove, they have a chip on their shoulder, they're just angry. They make very difficult teams on that second time. It's one thing if you lose by just a point, if it's a close game and you can say with pride, like, hey, we gave it all we had on the pitch. I don't think there's a single San Antonio FC player that thinks that coming off of that game. And I don't want to see Rhode Island FC become the excuse to like suddenly play out of their minds, right? Like something they have no business doing because they wouldn't have done it without that kind of result going their way. It'll be interesting to see. We're going to unpack that in a second, but let's start with the roster itself and the injury report. As of right now, we have Morris Dugan still on a day-to-day. He's out of the boot. We did ask Coach McKay at the end of the last week's game. He was in light training and running, but I don't know if that's enough on an away leg like this that you want to bring him back. You've got only 5 games left to go. Which one of those actually matter? Which ones are the ones that we want to make sure that we have someone like Morris Dugan here for? Again, the lineup on paper, maybe San Antonio is not that tough. Do we bring a defender out who's on the mend? It'll be interesting to see. He may travel, but I don't think he gets the start.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't travel at all. If everyone else is healthy, there's enough other players to send out there that I think they would feel comfortable just giving him that little bit more of rest to save him for the last few matches and then hopefully those playoffs coming up.
Yeah, and like I look at it, I believe San Antonio FC has a grass field because they've been selected to be one of the training camps for the World Cup. Grass field, that's Amos Shapiro Thompson's game right there. So I think you got to give him another reason to go back out. So let's talk about this roster prediction. We've got that we get back to it. We don't know. There's a couple of variables here, of course, but we look at it kind of more as kind of a return to form. I don't know if you agree with this 100%. What do you think?
All right. So we're thinking Koke and net. He is he's day to day, so we don't know. It could be Lee.
Koke is on baby duty. So for all we know, if that's something, he may not travel just as an outright precaution. And like if he knows, like we already saw what happened with Orange County, that could be a situation where it's probably going to be Lee. We're still going to put Koke because if he's available, obviously he goes. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see Lee and Net and Nate Silvera making his second trip away, traveling as the backup keeper.
And then we've got Nodarse, Yao, and Stoneman in that back three with a midfield of Quizera, Hervo, Panayiotou, Holstad, and Turnbull with Fuson and Chico up top.
So I've got JJ Williams dropped back down to the bench. I think that he does a lot, but I think for this formation to shine, it's either got to be JJ Williams up there with Fuson taking on Jack's role, or Jack's got to be on the pitch. So I think the decision that needs to be made there is which one of the J's do you want? Do you want single J or do you want double J?
Maybe one of those kind of one or the other kind of situations until we can figure out how to integrate them all together there.
Now, we saw Mark Ibarra last week get the start with Zach Hervo, with Holstead coming off to that right wing back instead of Turnbull. I think we see now that goes back. Do you see it's Hervo gets the start over Ibarra still?
Potentially there. Coach definitely seems to like Hervo and what he brings to the team. It's very similar to Ibarra, but I think that there's, like we had mentioned before, Hervo, I think, just tends to look forward a little more. Ibarra is a little bit more like kind of the safety net in a way.
Okay. So then on the San Antonio side of things, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. We've got it down to a couple of different things. The coach loves to kind of bring a 3-5-2 out, but he has been experimenting as of late. Some of that experimentation has caught him very flat-footed. So we think it's going to be a return to form of a 3-5-2, similar to what Rhode Island stacks up. And you're going to see first and foremost Richard Sanchez, who is out for their number one keeper, who's been injured off and on all season. I feel really bad because that could be probably one of the reasons that San Antonio has struggled at times. Sanchez is a pretty good keeper considering he's an alternate. He's their third round pick, so to speak. Both of their keepers have been injured this season. So Sanchez coming in to do the work of a substitute, so to speak. And then you've got Carter Manley, Kendall Burks, and Mitchell Tainer in the back three. Tainer just recently coming off of a yellow card suspension, so he's been having some discipline problems. And then in that midfield five, you've got Reese Buckmaster of Hartford Athletic fame, in case you recognize the name, Jorge Fernandez, Luke Hackinson, and Nelson Blanco, with what we believe Luis Solniak to kind of command the front in an attacking, kind of bringing the ball, linking between the midfield and the forwards. Jorge Henderson, we're going to talk about in a minute, but he is an interesting player, someone who also is on some disciplinary actions. He's actually got 10 yellow cards already for the season, and I think he's dangerously close to some disciplinary updates to that second level of suspension. And then in the front, we've got the double Juans right now, Juan Brigadeau and Juan Agadello of New England Revolution fame. Juan Brigadeau is a relatively newcomer. He's been on the squad all season, but he's been shining very brightly over the last 4 to 6 games. So we think he's earned his way to getting another start on the night. But it wouldn't surprise me if you see Solniak come up to play with Agadello and they bring in something like Burks, actually not Burks, but Booney into the midfield to kind of offset those positions. They have a lot of talent towards the front half of this team. The back half tends to be pretty stable in the elections on the night.
Stoke City legend Juan Agadello. I'm surprised we didn't go after him. I mean, he seemed to have kind of find his spot in USL if you go back and look through his career, he hasn't actually put up very big numbers, but he's always been one of those big up and coming talents. And then it's, like all of a sudden he's kind of getting up in there in age, and he hasn't actually put those numbers up, but he did fairly well with Birmingham recently.
He's got 11 goal contributions, 7 goals, 4 assists. Basically, he's Noah Fuson to a certain extent. I wouldn't have minded if we had picked him up. I think that when you look at the strategy of finding players that fit your formula, if he's a Birmingham guy, he should have known Coach. Coach should have been very familiar with his game. There's the New England Revolution connection. I hate to say it.
Yeah, the Revs haters already call us Revs 2 anyway. Might as well just lean into
it.
They
don't call us Revs 2. They call us Revs Light. But
whatever.
I mean, I would have been okay with Agudelo being the second most sold jersey after Koke Vegas. I mean, whatever helps fund the club's war chest so they can go out and buy more players and win more games. I would have been completely fine with a Juan Agudelo on this team. In fact, next year, Juan Agudelo, if you hate the fact that you're going to finish in like 11th place with San Antonio, I'm sure you can negotiate your way out and you can come to Rhode Island. We'll take you.
I mean, hey, a lot of these contracts are 1 year, so who knows?
Exactly. So let's get into the actual business of San Antonio FC. This team is so weird because if you look back 2 years ago, they won the entire thing.
Yeah, USL
champions. And I know we talk all the time about, especially in the domestic leagues here, that there's a lot of parity, something that can at times be a strength and at times be almost a curse. It's a cautionary tale of reminding yourselves that whatever you're doing this year, nothing gold can stay, and it may be fleeting and it may go away because you'll have a completely different roster the next year for construction purposes. But they won this thing 2 years ago. They finished 4th last year, and now here they are looking on the outside in. Texas is just struggling over the last 12 months to perform in the USL. One team is completely gone. Rest in peace, Rio Grande.
RGV, legends.
El Paso's below San Antonio, and then now San Antonio's in the double-digit realm of 10th place. Like the Copa Tejas used to be a thing that people like got excited for. I think New Mexico United has just been like the curse in New Mexico United has been just stealing all of their feng shui, because this is a team that is struggling. When we look at their home form, and this is I'm really glad that you started doing the research of like comparing not just the team's overall performance, but also looking how they do on the road versus how they do at home. But in their recent home form, they're 2-1-2 in their last 5 matches. They beat Phoenix at home and North Carolina FC at home. Phoenix then replied and said, "Hey, what if we showed you the same hospitality back?" But this will be their first home match after playing a 3-game away stretch. So again, kind of like what happened with us at FC Tulsa, we wanted to like take our revenge after some bad run of form and make sure that didn't happen in front of the fans. In a lot of ways, San Antonio is going through the same moment themselves after getting just bludgeoned to death. They've picked up 2 wins and a loss in that period of time, so it's not like it was as bad of a like run of form where they had consecutive losses, but like they have something that they need to desperately show to these fans getting into the end of the season. San Antonio is really weird. And by the way, I keep looking at them as SAFC, but there's another SAFC. Do you know what the SAFC that like dominates all the tweets and the hashtags and the abbreviations? I'll give you a hint. They're in England.
Yeah, I know. That's immediately what I thought of. I feel like I know it, but like being put on the spot, I can't think of it at the moment right now.
So I'm gonna let our listeners educate Jason in the chat. Google, or if you don't know it, Google SAFC and see what team comes up first, because it's not San Antonio FC. But San Antonio has been kind of a one-trick pony this season, having generated a majority of their offense actually through set pieces. Jason cheated; he looked it up. Through set pieces, crosses, and corners. They're not a team that always plays direct, and when they do, it kind of comes through only 2 players in Solniak and Jorge Hernandez. This team loves to just crowd the box and just collect something, whether it's in the air, although they don't win all the aerial duels that they should for the goal production they have from crosses and corners. So much more as they just like poach. They just sit in the box, numbers are forward, ball falls to their feet, and they get lucky. It's the formula that's happened a lot. It almost looks like it's like chaotic, like youth academy soccer at certain times, and it doesn't give me a sense of like there's an actual purpose or a strategy. It's just like dumb luck at times. And I don't mean any disrespect to it, but when you don't have a lot of direct goals coming, with the exception of 2 players,
get it into the mixer, you know?
Yeah,
See
but
what
like,
happens.
but is that the evolution of where soccer is today?
No, but we have to go through the Stone Age to get to that, top tier.
We're playing soccer civilization now.
Yeah, we're just behind a little bit.
San Antonio FC is like tier 1 and the rest of the league's playing in like tier 3 already. That being said, when it isn't through Hernandez or Solniak, it seems to be that they're kind of in a bit of a drought. They're in the bottom quartile of goal production at only 27 goals on the season, and they're barely holding on to that like 1 goal per game average right now per 90. That being said, if you had to summarize San Antonio's season, though, it's not in offensive production. And spoiler alert, they're in 10th place. It's not in defense either in terms of good defense. They're notorious now for some really bad defensive actions. They are leading the league in a couple of really bad stats that you don't want to lead in. And when you look at the macro picture of how those all kind of combine together, it kind of tells you everything you need to know without having ever watched any tape on this team. So I need to give full credit. They are third, like I said, in crossing. They love to throw a ball into the box. But when you look at the rest of the stats, they're third in clearances per 90. So they are just boot the ball, get it out. They're taking a lot of pressure. They're absorbing a lot of shots. They're absorbing a lot of attacking prowess. They're third in the league in successful tackles, only 0.1 behind us. They're going for our successful tackles FC.
We had to steal it from them. For a long parts of the season, they were successful tackle FC.
But we're not even in first place anymore. That's the problem. I thought we would always have that stat, but even we aren't in first place anymore.
Up and
down. They're currently in first for fouls per match. That is a scary one to have when you combine it with tackles FC. And guess what? They're also fifth in yellow cards. The only thing they're able to really keep their nose out of is the red cards. They've only got a few for the year, and most of them have come through second yellow
on
card.
The edge, get right up to it and just back off.
That is exactly what it is. This team, if I were to summarize it, they are known for physicality. They're known for being rough and tough. I don't know if that's like a Texan thing. They are known for scrappy play, emergency defending, and when the game is getting away from them, they're not afraid to hack and slash to bring players down, to slow down the momentum of the game.
Good hack and slash.
This is like, if they just played the 4-4-2, I would say basically this is soccer from like the 1991 era.
It's classic Brexit ball for you.
So that being said, I think, and we'll talk about it in a second about how Rhode Island FC is going to stack up, but watching as many minutes as I did of this team, nothing that they do scares me. A lot of this comes from dumb luck or like the brilliance of two players, which if you can isolate them, it's really easy to lock this team down. I don't think that we need a lot to worry about going into this, but at the same time, I'm completely worried because I should be worried and I'm not worried. So that tells me I have to reverse the worry and be worried. I've already lost. I don't even know how I should feel now. I've unworried my worry, but we should be worried.
Well, let's talk about a few other players here who maybe we got to watch out for. One of them being Jorge Hernandez. The Mexican attacking midfielder has spent some time in Ukraine and Belgium after being with Ventura County FC, which used to be LA Galaxy 2, their academy, for a number of years. The season so far, he's got 2 goals and 8 assists, some of the highest like goal scoring contributions and whatnot that he's put up. So he's kind of starting maybe to develop and come into his own. He's got one of the highest, if not top, chance creation like numbers in the league. But in terms of those goal contributions that I mentioned, those numbers have been spread out, and it's kind of been a bit for him. This team, like we mentioned, has been struggling. But everyone in this team kind of contributes on the defensive side. So him being an attacking midfielder, if you look at like his stats column in terms of like blocks, interceptions, tackles, he's contributing there as well.
I respect, and that's probably why he has as many yellow cards as he has, because while he is an attacking midfielder and he is putting in a ton of work, he's also kind of the only thing he can do when he's just trying to catch up to the game is sometimes he has to be the man. It's kind of like when a quarterback throws a pick six and it's like he has the choice to stop that interception from scoring, or he can like do his best to try to but it's all like, you can't hurt your quarterback. It's kind of one of those things, except Jorge Hernandez will throw his body into it and try to destroy whatever's going on that's not to San Antonio's favor. I will say, back to the stat you said about chances created. So in season, his league performance is stellar, but he's actually, to your point about his creation production, he's now tied for the highest ever record in USL Championship alongside Aaron Malloy at 64 chances created. So like, this is like,
that's impressive.
Yeah, I always love with Rhode Island that we talk about, like, who's the goal scorer, who's like again earlier, who's the player of the year. When you have multiple players that you can talk about and feel comfortable about and say, like, this player's done this player's done that, it makes you feel like you have a more well-rounded team. When you can put all the hopes and dreams on like 1 to 2 players, and in this case Jorge Hernandez, I got the Patriots on the brain, guys. Jorge Hernandez, you can tell that he's really, like, he's taking this team and trying to do something with it when very little exists, and unfortunately that's still not getting it across the finish line. So besides Jorge, the other kind of players that we want to talk about, one of them is Kevin Lambert. The Jamaican international spent numerous years with Phoenix Rising FC, ironically leaving last summer before they won their first USL title. That's got to haunt. That's got to haunt you.
Yeah, he left in August, and then a few months later, ouch.
He still gets a ring for it, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works. Potentially.
We interviewed Noah Fuson earlier this week, and he was on the Columbus Crew roster last year before he came here. I asked if he got a ring, and he said, I don't think Open Cup and being on the bench, or not being on the bench, not being selected, get you a ring. And I was kind of thinking, like, I always hear these stories that, like, the janitor of the front office gets a ring. Yeah, like,
the
like,
greens guy.
I feel like Noah just didn't ask for something that he was like. He helped probably scrimmage and train against those guys without his efforts and keeping them honest. Noah, I think you deserve a ring, even if you're too humble to go and ask for it yourself. We need to start a GoFundMe. It's not even a GoFundMe. We need just to get a signature. There we go. We need to change.org. Kano Smith to request to his friend Wilfried Nancy to give Kano's player a 2023 MLS Cup ring. I want it. I just want it now. But back to Kevin Lambert. He's on loan now from Real Salt Lake, and this season he finds himself in San Antonio FC's midfield. I don't have him starting per se, but he will make an appearance. It's just with the likes of Hakkasan and Hernandez.
He's also coming back from an injury, it seems. He's missed the last 5 games, and he did play a little bit in the Phoenix match. So we will see him. I just don't know if he's going to play the full game, but he is a very influential midfielder for them.
Right. It's kind of like Juan Agudelo hasn't had as many starts because he's up there in age too. It's the Dom Dwyer effect. At home, I think you're more likely to see him than maybe if you were to travel, but that's absolutely the case. And then speaking of, I kind of buried it there, but Juan Agudelo, we have to talk about him, right?
Wait, Juan Agudelo plays with this team? 2017 Gold Cup champion? That's crazy. The ex-Rev man finds himself in San Antonio FC after spending some time with Birmingham FC, like we mentioned, in a very long MLS career. He went to Stoke for like 10 minutes and then came back. But he's putting up some good numbers this year. He's got 7 goals and 4 assists this season. So he's been doing well for himself. And like much of the San Antonio team, as we allude to, he works hard off the ball, contributing to the defensive side. So I think he'll probably find his way into this game.
I think it's the 2017. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure the 2017 men's Gold Cup kit is my favorite kit of all time. Like, even amongst club kits, like international kits, I'm pretty sure that's my favorite one of all time. So if anyone has my size Juan Agudelo 2017 Gold Cup authentic, let's talk. I've been looking for that. I wasn't looking for Agadelos.
Are you ready to get fleeced by kit collectors?
Maybe they have to have my size. So okay, we've had a lot of fun here. San Antonio is either going to be a wild game, there's going to be a rodeo, so to speak, or this game should be very much in Rhode Island FC's destiny to control. What do you think of the points and the elements that Rhode Island FC has to get right to get all 3 points, or even just a point? Do we even see another draw this season at this point? We got asked this question last week. We thought we may get a draw, but like at this point, we have to win everything that we want to win to just be in control of our future.
It's a must-win game, not a must-draw.
It's not a must-win. It's not a. It's can't lose. We're not doing this, but will we see draws?
Maybe. So when we look back at RIFC's recent away form, it's not been particularly great. I think the team needs to kind of find that balance of being confident in their game, but also respecting their opponent. And also, as we saw in this most recent game, they kind of came out flat in that first half. I think they need to come out right out the gates ready to play. And then, like I said, go out there, play your game. They are a physical team too. So kind of, challenge them, see where that takes them, and bring the game to San Antonio. And from there, make sure you have that respect to know that they do have threats in terms of Jorge Hernandez and Juan Agudelo. So make sure that you don't commit yourself too far. And then at that point, I think if they just keep their heads up, play their game, I don't see why we can't go out there and get a good result.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, as much as I love late night thrillers because it's just a sensational storyline to talk about, I would be a lot happier, to your point, if we just came out and played with the intensity that we needed for all of the game instead of those final 15 minutes. I don't know if I agree with you 100% that we came out flat. I think that we just got like a shark. I think we just got punched in the nose, and we're really confused how FC Tulsa got a goal on us that early. Because again, it was a good pass. It wasn't really an earned goal. Like, I would say 9 out of 10 times, I bet you Aaron Debu can't score that.
When you say earned goals, I mean,
okay, fair. But I'm just saying, like, I just want to see the intensity, the hunger, and I want to see them. I love when this club can play the game they want to play, and they can score first and then dictate terms. It's not something we've seen a lot of in the back half of the year, I feel like, and I'd like to see us get back into that, because that's going to make it significantly easier when we make a playoff run to control our destiny, right? And so that being said, the other thing that I think needs to happen is I really hope Coach Kano listens to the podcast, and I really hope that he listens to us, specifically me, about not tinkering anymore with this. Go back to what made us great: the 3-5-2, Turnbull outside, Holstead in the middle. You can do whatever you want in the midfield from a defense holding midfielder, but that front three you need 110 with space, and if that's Noah, if that's Jack, if it's JJ, and he needs to be like a hold up, like false nine, like I'm right, Kano, that the spacing and the sizing.
You heard it here first.
This team thrives with space to play. We see it with Quazera out on the wing. We see Turnbull kind of get the most dangerous when he's like poaching off the far side, and then like it stretches the field as they try to react to that, and then he can cut in. Like, we didn't play direct earlier in the season. It was one of our things that we didn't do a lot of. We've tried to change that. We've tried to do a little bit more. At times it works, but like, we thrive on second passes into the top of the box, or catching deflections from the keeper, or just, crosses and corners. Like, that's our wheelhouse. Like, continue to stick with that. If you get a goal and you get 2 goals, and then you want to try something and see what you can do to teach these guys how to handle teams and get more goals, I'm fine with that. And if we don't get any more and we still win like 2-0, 2-1, that's fine too. But like, I really kind of hope we go back to what has worked over this span of like from May to August, because outside of the Indy 11 game, which I still kind of threw away as like, we knew that we had to sacrifice a game somewhere, that game was winnable too. I don't think that we need to go in and tinker as much, unless it's managing minutes. And obviously at that point, coach is smarter than all of us, because he only knows the stability, the health of the players, and what they need from a physical and a mental mindset. Like, I understand that, but like, if everyone is healthy, don't tinker. Keep getting these guys to shine brightly. And if that all happens, I think Rhode Island FC has San Antonio dead to rights. I really do. I think that you don't have to reinvent the wheel on this one. And I think this is a solid 3-point collection for Rhode Island FC. That being said, with that physicality of San Antonio, this game is going to get scrappy. I think this is going to be the biggest brute fest we see all season. I think it's going to get choppy. I think that we're going to see yellow cards flying. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a red card. We haven't seen one in a while. And I think this reminds me of kind of like how Oakland was playing their game. I think we see a red card. We may even see a red card from both sides. I would not be surprised. But whatever happens, RIFC can take these points, and they're points that are there to be had. So we've got projections here. The fans agree with us. Rhode Island FC is going to win this game. 63% of fans think that they'll win. 37% think San Antonio. No one believes in the Draw Kings anymore. It's gone away. 0% believe that that the Draw Kings will return. I'd like to see us at least tie the record. I wanted us to win and beat it, but I just don't think it's going to happen. The Hillside last week got the closest prediction. So our quant, we have him down for a 2-2 draw prediction. So he's got the Draw Kings still in his heart. Don't know if that's something that we'll see carry over. I've got a 3-1 win. I think we're gonna continue our multi-goal scoring fortunes and our ways. I don't know who's going to score them. Maybe Air Frank's got 1 or 2 in him. Oh, Rio Grande Valley revenge. It's Frank's night. There you go. There you go. I said it there. You heard it here first. Jason, what do you got for scoreline predictions?
I don't like to say this, but I think it's 1-1. I think we're going to tie the record draw King special. I think when we look at our away form, I think that would be a trending in the right direction considering the losses that we have. We just haven't been very good away from home.
So after I just said no one believes in the Draw Kings anymore, you let me pontificate for 3 minutes and then you just went back to Draw Kings.
I don't want to tap.
This is why we're best friends. You know that?
I actually would be very happy if that was not the score and we win. That's kind of what I'm feeling in my jellies, you know?
I love jelly donuts. That being said, we've got the projections up on the screen. The home field advantage, which had the highest point spread of the season, continues to be now technically our highest projection because our quant, who has only missed 2 himself, he still believes that we're going to have 46 points on the season, which is 3 points below the expert, the real analysis in John Morrissey. We're still at 50, which puts us just slightly 0.9 above that projection. According to this one, though, this is going to be the first kind of confliction on the table. Andrew, on his projections, does have this as a draw, whereas, based on the advantages when this data was sampled, we should still see the 3-point win there. This is it. The best part about this schedule, going back to it, is we now are really in control of that destiny. We have 5 games left. 2 of them are away. This will be one of the final 2, and then the rest of our control is going to be at home in front of the fans at Burns Stadium against mostly very beatable teams, I think, or at least games where we can get points. So it is going to be a tale that we will see how this happens and how this shapes out. But in the meantime, we've got some questions, and I think we should just kind of roll through those and then get out of here. So I'm going to start. Bob asks, quick question. Loved the $16.36 tickets for next year, as you stated, but don't you think the $44 tickets are very aggressive in price? I mean,
I don't remember off the top of my head what section those are particularly in.
Those are the non-goal, but they're partially premium, because it's $16.36 on the 200s where we have our new tickets. We got tickets, everyone. Everyone calm down. You think that we don't support the club. We also, thanks to our ticketing rep who had a never say die mentality herself, said you will buy tickets and support this club. So we all have 2 tickets to be able to give away next season. Front row, dead center in the 200s. But I think it's after that, maybe it's the dead center, the center column of the 200. That one was a little bit more expensive. And then it might be on the side of the premium. We should know this, given the fact that we're quote unquote experts. But Bob, to answer your question, I don't know that it's aggressive. It's a market to make, right? So if there's appetite out there, they wouldn't have done this without the research and without some sort of analysis on that. I highly doubt that they just threw a dart on a board and said, "Oh, it landed on 44, so that must be it." That being said, I think that the club is probably going to have to figure out where do they really leverage their resources next year, because when they go and buy and fill out the suites and the loge and the reserves and the the corporate sponsor packages, that's money that they get up front, and then they don't really have to work for it all year, because those tickets end up being given away as gifts or thank yous to their employees or to their customers. It's a lot harder to fill the outsides, right? Like the 200 level is going to be probably the most challenging to get people to show up that just want to check the product out, see a game for the first time ever, see what all the hullabaloo is about. The problem is that when they go after that, if that center column, and I have a feeling this will happen, if people don't show up on certain days, whether it's due to weather or they were given tickets but they're not interested, we'll still get the tickets to be counted as sold because they were tickets purchased. But we've seen this in other stadiums that have premium seating. There's always 1 or 2 rows that those fans never show up, and that's probably why they're on the camera side, because I have a feeling that if we're going to see scarcity in terms of people in seats, it'll probably be in that premium seating index where it's been purchased and they got the money, but the fans aren't showing up.
I'd say 2 things real quick. The stadium, I don't think there's a bad seat in that house there. I think even that second tier, you're going to have a great view. And then also we've seen from this club that they care about their fans, and I think that they will make an adjustment if necessary. If they find that was a bad decision and it turns out that no one bought those, they'll probably change it.
Yeah, I mean, we spent the entire week on the Discord. People are excited about securing their tickets, putting their deposits down. Like every day, people are showing their positions on the 3D map, and it's just been exciting to see everyone celebrate being able to secure their spot in the future home. I'm excited about that as well. It'll be interesting there. Tim writes in, we all want a home playoff game, but if the team is away for their first playoff game, where do you want that game to take place? And is your answer because of the opponent or the location? Jason, I'll let you answer.
That's a good one. I mean, at some point it would be cool to go travel to all of them. You know, where's
You're taking too long. I'm going to say an answer for you. Tampa Bay is the right answer.
There you go.
Good weather, East Coast time zone, so we don't have lots, and probably a direct connect from Breeze Airways to fly down. That's all you had to say. You were going to say Detroit, weren't you?
No,
you
I
look
don't.
like you had Detroit on your mouth.
To go to Detroit. I mean, I would like to go to a away game there, but like that's maybe one you go in spring or something.
Sure. I mean, I want it to be Tampa. I want the club, and I'm just going to throw that out there and try to leverage the podcast here for a second. I would love for the club to come out and work out some sort of flight package or ticket package deal to be able to find a conduit for fans to go down. I don't know how they get their infrastructure set up to just suddenly go and chase a game, because remember, we will get to the very last game of the season to probably find our final positioning, right? Like we will win against Miami. They will go away forever. And then we will find out where we are playing a week later on a Saturday or Sunday. So like when you think about how fast the club has to scramble, to me, it would be really smart if they just said, let's charter a Breeze airplane. And I think they hold like 110 people. I'm just guessing here for a second. So the club, players and staff, and probably some members of the front office that would want to travel down for it. You've got 40. So you need to fill up another 70 to 80. You get 80 fans, cash in hand, whatever they need to offset within reason. They can't make the fans pay for everything if they're going to charter, but you let the fans come in. We saw New Mexico do that for the Open Cup game in LAFC. If it works and it's not financially like penalizing to the club to do it, I know that there's 80 fans that listen to this podcast that will go and do that right away. And so like, I hope that there's a way. I hope there's a conduit to get flight access and maybe ticket access for an away leg a game to Tampa. I think that would be awesome to go see and do. Nate writes in, with 5 games left, 15 points available, how many points do we get to secure a playoff spot? Well, Nate, the magic number is 15, so it's 15 points. But again, with some interleague stacking, I think we need to win at least 3 of these final 5 games, and I think we'd be better positioned to win 4 of the 5. But by the magic number alone, it's 15 points. So we'll move on that one. Matthew Jean writes in, we have seen a lot of time wasting and bad officiating this year. What do you think is the worst call or non-call from one of our matches?
Oh, that's a good one. I thought I would say it was that Jojea won, but then also we got a really good explanation from one of our listeners about how and why that happened. So I kind of let that one slide.
But I'll disagree though, because the fan that wrote in for it, that it's not Seth the ref. I forget this other ref's name. I apologize. The other ref. He explained perfectly why the ref couldn't see it because of the coffin corner, and why Jojea absolutely deserved the yellow for dissent. But he boggled the actual call, because Jojea shouldn't have. Like, I get it. It's a part of the game.
I think he had been kind of showing some frustration. And while I agree with Jojea for showing that frustration, that is something where you do get those cards for that.
I would say the worst call has been the Jojea penalty at Loudon. Luckily, the ball don't lie, so we were fine there. But yeah, I would say that
wasn't great.
But and then of course I feel like Matt Jean is trying to solicit an irrational response for Paul Blanchett and bringing back Oakland Root memories that I don't want to summon back into my head. So we're not going to go there. I was very happy with this ref to give the keeper for FC Tulsa a yellow card at like the 60th minute for time wasting.
Yeah, that was great to see.
Completely locked the keeper out of being able to goof around after that. And I would love to see more of that in the league instead of waiting till it's the 85th minute. I was hoping coach would bring AST in, like I said, for some time wasting at the end there, just so he could get like a call on and get celebrated, but it didn't happen.
Well, hey, hopefully this next match can go our way, and then he can get some minutes.
I agree. And then Zach, how dare you? How dare you do this to us, Zach? You're trying to cause civil war here. The players said this was a must-win game. You did not. Do you still feel the way you do?
I will just say this really quick, and then we're gonna leave it at that.
Well, no. I'm going to start real fast because I want to say, Zach, I know what your email address is now. So you made a mistake by sending it an email. Continue, Jason.
I was just gonna say, you want your coach and you want your players and all the staff to go ahead and say that everything is a must-win game. We try to, as much as we can, take a step back and, collect ourselves and look at matches and try and give a somewhat rational take about some of this, and look and not look at everything and say we have to win every single match. Because like you had mentioned, there is a reality that not every other team is going to win all their matches. As fans, of course, we want to always see our team win. We're significantly happier when our team wins. That's how irrational sports fans are. But there is a reality to it. You can't win every match, and sometimes things just happen, and you just got to shake it off and move on, and hope that if we see this team like collect themselves, they battle and they fight. If they were not doing that, I think we wouldn't be able to have as rational a take. We'd be a lot more angrier, right? If we sat there and said that team did not go out there and fight even in that 2-0 loss, we would be frustrated.
I completely agree. And, people tried to lord that over me about saying like, oh, well, you represent the club. I don't represent the club in any way, shape, or form. I am allowed to break it down as an analyst, a pundit, a reporter, whatever you want to call me, a journalist with a capital J. I'm allowed to say those things. No player is ever going to say, yeah, we can lose this game. We're completely comfortable with that. Like the
that
mentality
would be
that
from them to hear.
Yeah. And it breaks down their own confidence in themselves. So I agree. I'm not gonna take it any further than that. I've heard very interesting things across all different segments of people that follow and support and love this club over the last 48 hours even. So, call it what you want. It's not worth starting a fight over amongst the fans.
And I support everyone else's reason to, if they want to call it a must-win match, hey, go for it.
Exactly. So on that note, Jason, what's the game here? What are we playing here? We're playing San Antonio this weekend.
Yeah,
I'm completely discombobulated by this conversation.
Ginobili's house or something, right? So RIFC squares off against San Antonio FC on Saturday, 9/28 at 8:30 p.m. You can watch that game at the official watch party at Providence G Pub, or with Defiance 1636 at the Guild, or at your house on Nessun and ESPN+.
Then we'll see you back for the second leg showdown against the Tampa Bay Rowdies on Saturday, October 5th at 7:30 p.m. If you can't make it to the game, you can watch it, of course, on Nessun and ESPN+. We're really excited about a guest that we'll have next week to preview the Tampa Bay game. Probably it's going to end up with us doing a pre-recorded instead of a live, but we'll still drop it at 8 p.m. for a live event, and then Jason and I will sit on the pod to kind of interact with the chat. Tim is reminding me for the Guild event for the away game, since this will be one of the last ones.
So I think it actually is the last one, because the technical last away game, Defiance is going to go to the official watch party. So this is the last Defiance Guild match.
Well, then at least until playoffs, right? So then if that's the case, and you've never gone to a Guild party before, you absolutely need to come for the last one of the season. One of the board members is in the chat right now reminding us that there's going to be a dessert potluck at the Guild if you want to participate. So come down. You should absolutely spend some time. If you've been waiting all year to see what that's about, this is your last chance, at least in regular season play. So super excited there. And then, of course, if you're not already following us on all of the different things, make sure you give us some love. We always appreciate the comments. We're trying to branch out and do new forms of media. We're kind of experimenting with some new fun projects there. So really appreciate all the support and the love that you guys give. And your likes, your follows, your subscriptions, they all sustain us. They keep us going. So really appreciate everything you guys do for us.
Thanks, guys. You're the best. All right, so make sure to check out our friends over at the Blazing Musket for all of your New England soccer coverage, including RIFC, and that's at theblazingmusket.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Threads, and TikTok at RIFC Podcast, our Instagram at Raising Anchor, and then we got that website, www.raisinganchorpodcast.com.
Jason, let's go get these points. Always a blast hanging out with you, and can't wait to see what happens on the weekend. Anchor's up.
Anchor's up.